Hello, meat stalkers, and welcome to the making of carnivore chocolate cupcakes. I have a pound of 80% lean ground pork. You can also use ground beef. Either one works. I've used ground turkey and ground chicken. They didn't taste very good, but you do you. So in it goes into a medium saucepan with, get in there, with 2 cups of hot tap water. It doesn't have to be hot enough to cause you discomfort. Just nice and warm because it makes the meat loosen up. The meat. Anyway, we're going to make what's called a slurry. We're going to work the meat and water together until it's as uniform as you can get it. Just break up all the lumps as you go. And when we're done mixing this all up, it's going to be about the consistency of wet oatmeal. All right, see? Wet oatmeal. There you go. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Now that we've created our slurry, we're going to heat it up to a boil, stirring it a couple of times as we go. And once that comes to a boil, there we go. That's what we want. We're going to knock the heat back to a pretty sturdy simmer. And then we're going to let it cook for 15 minutes. There we go. And we'll stir it 3 or 4 times during the cooking process, knocking out any lumps that we can find as we go along. And once it's done, there goes the timer. 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we're going to take it off the heat to cool. And I'm going to let mine sit for about 10 minutes. Just long enough to where it's cool enough for you to feel comfortable handling it. That's a big pot of hot stuff, and I don't want you to feel nervous about spilling it. So just let it cool as long as you need to feel safe. And now we're going to strain the meat crumbles out of the broth. You can just pour it through a strainer, whatever you have. I just spoon it out at first like this because I don't want it to splash. And we're going to press as much of the broth out as we can. It doesn't have to be dry. It just has to be not dripping anymore. All right. Now we're going to put our meat crumbles into a food processor. You really can't do this in a blender because the blender requires too much fluid. We really need to grind this in a food processor, but most people have a food processor nowadays, my understanding. And we're going to process this to a smooth paste. Now you have this 2+ cups of delicious pork broth. Please don't throw that away. Put it in some soup. You can drink it as a beverage, give it to the dog, but please don't throw this away. It is so healthful and full of collagen. We'll need a silicone scraper. And we're going to process this total of about between 2 and 3 minutes. So we're going to pulse it a few times to get it going. And we're just going to let it run. I think this was about a minute, maybe a little bit more in total. And then once that's done, we're going to take the lid off and scrape it down. So we're about halfway done. We're going to scrape down the sides just to make sure any little bits and bobs that got stuck to the sides get down in there and get processed. Also, we're going to scoop it up from the bottom of the work bowl and just to make sure nothing's hanging out in the basement in the corners. No big chunks escaping. And we're going to process it for about 1 more minute. And this is what it looks like. This is what you want to be looking for. Come out of there, you. You will see completely smooth puree. This is also an excellent way to make baby food, my friends. If you're looking for a way to get your baby started on meat as early as possible, this is an excellent way to make baby food. You just add enough broth back to make it thin enough for whatever baby you're feeding. Now we got a half a cup of organic cocoa powder, 2/3 of a cup of organic granulated sweetener, that's allulose, 2 ounces of unsweetened baking chocolate, and 2 tablespoons of butter. I like to use these little wafers. You can buy them off the internet. And also a tablespoon of baking powder, your favorite kind, whatever you like, a teaspoon of stevia glycerite, and 2 packets of Salter caramel coffee electrolyte powder, and also 8 eggs. You can use medium eggs, you use 10. Now we're going to sift all the dry ingredients together. That's the cocoa powder, the 2/3 granulated allulose or erythritol, and the 2 packets of Salter electrolyte. Please sift your cocoa powder, my friends. You don't want little unsweetened cocoa BBs floating around in your cake batter. And you don't want whatever that is. You never know. So just throw that away. You don't want that in your cake batter. Now we're going to melt our chocolate and butter together. I start mine with 30 seconds. If you have a very powerful microwave, you might want to start with 15 seconds. But start with 15 to 30 seconds on high and then stir well. If you stir your chocolate frequently, as you're melting it, it requires less heat to melt. And therefore, you will be less likely to scorch your chocolate. Unfortunately, here we see that we're halfway done, and it's obviously not melted, but stirring it helps it melt faster. If you scorch your chocolate, unfortunately, my friends, you can't rescue it. You have to start over with fresh chocolate. So be conservative melting your chocolate. So I melted mine for a total of a minute, 30 seconds at first, and then additional 30 seconds, 10 seconds at a time, stirring in between. And now we have beautiful, smooth, buttered chocolate. Yummy. This is what it looks like. All right, and now we're just going to collect the rest of our ingredients and start adding our eggs. We're going to be adding the eggs 2 at a time and processing in between. And the reason why we do that is because the meat paste is very stiff. And if you put the eggs in all at once, sometimes clumps of the meat paste can just get caught up in the fluid as the batter gets fluid too quickly, and they just sail around the bowl and they never get mixed up. So we're going to put the eggs in 2 at a time and incorporate them completely in between. And this will prevent those stray lumps from forming and getting kind of stuck in the batter. because the batter comes up to texture gradually. So I had to scrape that one down because that egg went all over the side of the bowl. But here we go. We're going to put a total of 8 large eggs, 2 at a time, blending completely in between. And scraping down the sides too. And like I said, get down into the corners of that bowl. No gremlins hanging out in the corners of the basement. And there we go. Now, we are going to strain this batter and scrape off the blade. And now you're going to see, as this is strained, there's going to be a bunch of little tiny BB-like pieces of gristle. And in a burger or a sausage patty, you wouldn't notice them, but getting a little BB of chewy gristle in a bite of chocolate cake is quite unexpected and unpleasant. So we're just going to get rid of them. And it really doesn't take very long to strain this. And we strain it after the eggs go in because it's easier and because it gets out any bits of egg fiber like the calazi that people sometimes call it a umbilical cord. It's not, but anyway, see those little gristle bits? Yeah, you don't want them in a cake. That's an unpleasant surprise. So we're just going to get rid of that, and we're going to add our teaspoon of stevia glycerite, and we're going to add our melted chocolate. By the way, if you're not putting in the salter packets, you can just make this plain chocolate cake. Use 2 teaspoons of stevia to get the equivalent of sweetness. But we've cut it back to 1 for this because we've put the stevia packets, sifted those in with the cocoa powder. So this is the cocoa powder, the allulose, and the baking powder and the stevia packets, all sifted together. I mean, rather the salter packets, excuse me, all sifted together. And we're just going to stir this in to make a nice smooth batter. And look at that, my friends. That is chocolate cake batter with no nuts and no flour. Amazing. Now, you will see I have cupcake molds in the background there, and you can load them any way you want to. I just like to use a piping bag because that's my habit and I'm comfortable doing it. I've cut the tip off and put a little binder clip on the end to keep it from running out the bottom, and put it inside of a 24-ounce tumbler just to hold the bag up. But you can load your cupcake molds any way you like, with a disher or just pour it in. Now this recipe makes 20 cupcakes, and that's why I have 1 flap of the cupcake mold hanging over the edge, because we're not going to use those anyway. And these are silicone cupcake molds, which I use because you don't need to grease them or use cupcake liners, because the cupcakes pop right out. And but because they're floppy, they're silicone, you have to put them on a sheet tray. And I'm just letting 1 of those hang over like that because they fit in the tray better. And we're not using those 4 wells anyway, because we're only making 20 cupcakes. This recipe makes 20 cupcakes. So we're going to fill the wells 2/3 of the way full. These do expand some, but not as much as regular cupcakes do, so you can fill them a little fuller. Bake in a preheated oven for 30 minutes. And here we go. They test done the same way any other cupcake would. Just tap the top a little bit when they're domed and crackled. And you tap the top a little bit, and if they spring back with a gentle pressure, oops, don't burn yourself, Patty. They spring back with gentle pressure, just like regular chocolate cupcakes do. And there we are. And believe me, they smell just like chocolate cupcakes too. It makes the house smell fabulous. See, they test just like regular cupcakes. Now we're going to let them cool inside their hold molds for 5 minutes. You do want to turn them out after about 5 or 10 minutes though, because they do sweat a lot on the bottom, and the bottoms will be damp and sticky if you let them cool completely in the molds. So I do like to turn them out of the molds. If you make them in a regular cupcake tin with papers, you don't need to turn them out because the dampness will be absorbed by the paper. But this, my friends, is why I use silicone cupcake molds. Look at that. That's why I use silicone, my friends. There we go. There are our 20 cupcakes, and we are going to let them cool completely. You can eat them while they're still warm. I like to eat them like a muffin sometimes with just a little butter. So does my hubby, while they're still warm, fresh out of the oven. And there we go. Cool them completely before storing. And thanks for watching.